Hello, my name is Mayor Watt. I run that site right there. ohmTown.com is a news aggregation site, and I use it to talk about the news over here on Twitch. So if you go to twitch.tv/ohmTown, if you're watching this over at YouTube or you're downloading the podcast, that's where this source is. So if you want to see me doing it real time, then come over at 6 o'clock. If you're already here in chat, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Be sure to follow so that you can be told when I'm streaming. So we are 3 months into this, and considering some more changes. Not really sure what I actually want to do other than the daily news show, because I've got so many other interests that are associated with ohmTown. It's really about me evaluating what I'm interested in doing and what people are interested in hearing. So Twitch is notoriously about chatting, but that takes a considerable amount of time. And I need to kind of do this in a short period of time. So if you are interested in doing more discussion with the news, let me know. And I will continue to rejigger everything so that I can do that and focus on the chat. But I have been for the last 90 days grabbing about 20 headlines from ohmTown.com, and that's where I get a lot of the traffic from, but not so much here on Twitch in terms of interaction. So again, thank you for coming in to chat, and please let people know that I'm doing this, because I don't go out and rant and rave about me chatting. I feel weird doing that, even though what I've been doing all my life is helping businesses, and I know all about marketing. I know all about business. I don't like following my own advice, I suppose. So feel free to let people know that I'm out there talking about the news. And the way that it works is I grab those 20 headlines or so, not really always 20, and I go and I talk about the news for about an hour. And then I also throw in my tidbits of experience, knowledge, either wisdom or lack of wisdom, depending on your take based on my take. So let's get into the news, and we'll talk about the first article, which is about Tesla. And this is in the mobile channel. And Tesla's sales jumped in the first quarter, bucking industry trend again. The electric car maker maintained its momentum, which is a funny turn of phrase, from last year, even as larger automakers continue to struggle with parts shortages. Let's click this link. It take you over to New York Times. This article says, let's see, it's written by Jack Ewing. Has a picture of the Tesla Model Y, going through the assembly lines. And it says Tesla said it delivered 310,000 vehicles from January through March, up from 185,000 during the same period in 2021. So that's quite a bit more. Pardon me one second. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, that's an interesting, it's not just that's a pretty sharp increase year over year. But that comes with confidence that electric vehicles are here to stay, that infrastructure is being built out for them, and the price has, is approachable for what you get. So how many it's broken out to, I'm not sure. How many Model Y or S or 3 are coming out, but maybe I can root around a little bit. They make this comment here at the bottom of the article. At the same time, the market for electric cars is becoming more crowded as established car makers belatedly offer more battery-powered models that resonate with buyers, like the Ford Mustang Mach-E, which I personally don't really like the design of, or the Volkswagen ID4. Traditional automakers could begin to take a greater share of the electric car market if, as some industry executives predict, the semiconductor shortage eases later in the year. I'm not sure. I think the impact now of the shortage appears to be easy to manipulate. And so I think that we're going to have a constrained level of production to try and drive prices up. But maybe that's just my observation, and time will tell. So we'll keep an eye on this, just like with the rest of the news. The next article is over in the continuity report. It's all about movies. Box office report comes out and says Morbius drives Stake into #1 spot with $38 million plus projected opening. They say that a person should never invite a vampire into one's house, but what about a vampire inviting a person into a movie theater? It seems that a modest amount of viewers are accepting that request, as Columbia Pictures' Morbius, starring Jared Leto, is sinking its teeth into the domestic box office top spot. So what's really interesting about this, okay, so this article is written over on Variety.com by J. Kim Murphy. It's the letter J, by the way, not J-A-Y, but letter J, then the word Kim, the name Kim Murphy. Has a big old picture of an angry Morbius. And it's interesting because the people that I've spoken to who are very much into sci-fi, fantasy, Marvel in particular, DC comic book industry, etc., they're not liking it. But I haven't seen it yet. I prefer to watch it at home. That's why, over the last 2.5 years, you can kind of embrace it, and it really doesn't impact you that you're not going to movie theaters. But I have to wait a little bit longer, and my opinion on these things ends up being a little bit neutered, because by the time everybody hears me talking about it, it's done and considered old news. But that said, I'm more interested in talking about the general consensus of the movie now, and not necessarily my particular opinion on it. I can tell you all that later if it comes up again after I've watched it. But the whole idea of this world building is pulling from the copious amounts of historical world building in the comic industry, and what amounts to long form novels, story arcs, and the realization into as close to real world as you can get in a movie theater, right? The next step for this is to make it into VR worlds where people can actually walk around inside the world that's being created by comic books. The writing is sometimes fantastic. The artwork is always good. But then when you translate it into the real world in terms of movies, then it strikes another chord. And so I'm always amazed by these movies, even when the story might be weak or something really outlandish. There was a scene in one of the movies where somebody jumps off of the back of an airplane as part of sacrificing themselves, and it just doesn't make any sense, and the cinematography was really weak on it. But it is what it is. You're supposed to be entertained by it. You're not necessarily supposed to be overwhelmed by the storyline being deep and everything is perfect. And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But wow, some of the things that I've heard from people is that it was not a fun watch. But I'm sure that I'll enjoy it. Maybe I have a lower threshold. But let's continue on to the next article. Under display, Face ID could arrive with iPhone 16 in 2024. There have been a lot of people talking about what the next iteration is, but there's some back and forth. And this article says, a future iPhone upgrading introducing an under-display camera for Face ID to the iPhone may not arrive until 2024, an analyst claims, with a potentially clear and complete display forecast for the iPhone 16. Current rumors for the iPhone 14 Pro models has Apple considering a shift away from the infamous notch. However, in a tweet, TF Securities' Ming-Chi Kuo believes that the notch and its replacement could be retired by an under-display version in a future model. In response to a tweet from DSCC analyst Ross Young, posted on March 30th, predicting an under-display version of the Face ID for iPhone 16, Kuo offered a Saturday morning that his prediction is what? Let's see. This is an article over at appleinsider.com, and it's written by Malcolm Owen. And let's see what the rest of this article said. Let's see, the prediction is the same. Under display Face ID coming in 2024 iPhone 16, and this time schedule is less of a technical issue and more of a marketing purpose. All right. I'm really curious how somebody can get that level of information without someone lacking a better turn of phrase, plugging the hole. Apple is notorious about trying to plug leaks, but this level of discussion seems to only come from Kuo. And I don't know where the source really is in relation to Kuo. So I've never really dug into it. Sometimes you find out that people know people, but again, who is powering this? And I guess it'll continue until Apple finds out and stops this leak, because I don't know, hype is hype. But to me, I don't really care what most people say until we're really close to the release of a product. Everything is up in the air. So really, what is the purpose of a rumor like this other than fantasy and getting that endorphin rush? Oh, I found out something titillating, which is part of news. But I want, facts. I want evidence. I want something substantiated. And interestingly enough, Kuo is really aware, because the stuff that is said apparently tends to come true. There needs to be like a dashboard of information where the person who has made the statement ticks the box as yes, it came true, and obviously when they said it, just to see what the ratio is between yes and yes, you got it right, and no, you didn't get it right. It would be interesting to see a longer term review of it. It's kind of like the stock market. There are people that make claims about stock, and they're overall always wrong. But there are people that are so well connected, like Buffett, so well connected that what they do without disclosing it to everybody is always a success, unless something global happens. But that's because they have information that the general public just don't have access to at the same time. Yet it's never considered insider information or anything like that for whatever reason. For most people, you're finding out about it in the news, but there are many people that are one level closer to the news getting it, and they act before it's disclosed. And it happens an unbelievably high number of times. And it's just not investigated because it's considered, regular market movements. Let's continue on to the next article. Here is why Kenya's award-winning indigenous river reed salt is almost 22 times the price of standard sea salt. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel, and its source is Business Insider. But hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Wow. Hello, I'm Mayor Watt. I run ohmTown. That's that site right there. Thank you so much. Wow, everybody. Very much appreciated. Wow. So what are you playing over there? I don't have all of the goodies and gadgets that let me know. Rodimus Zero, how are you? Hi, Brilding. Thank you very much, everybody. Wow. Really appreciate it. I don't know. I've got my music muted. So it's really just me chatting about the news. And we're talking about sea salt right now. Well, I'm just about to start talking about sea salt and why Kenya's is 20 times the price of regular sea salt. And so since you're all new here, or at least most of you are, I'll tell you how this works. I run ohmTown. That's that site right there. And it aggregates news. And because of what I do when I'm not streaming, I sift through about 200 news sources regularly throughout the day. I'm consuming news constantly. And I needed a source that wasn't as crazy as 200 news sources. So I built ohmTown. And then over the years, I've shown it to some people and they said, hey, open it up to the public. So I built a better site around it, and ta-da, we have ohmTown.com. And from there, I had the idea that what I want to do is take these 6 categories, break them out into individual shows, and then bring each 1-hour show to Twitch. And from there over to YouTube as kind of a long-term storage facility where people can watch it later, and a podcast. So there's actually an ohmTown.com channel on YouTube and the podcast. And I'm even looking at TikTok because, as you can tell, I am wildly exciting, and it's a nonstop party here at ohmTown. So TikTok was just a natural progression. The idea here is to go over about 20 articles, and that's the ohmTown Daily News Show. Eventually, I'll open it up to more stuff. But right now, it's these 6 main categories. And then my aggregator throws them all of these articles into various categories based on their topics and keywords that I'm looking for. And then I talk about it. So if you ever have any questions or comments, feel free to throw it all into chat, and I'm happy to talk about it. So this one here is, here's why Kenya's award-winning indigenous river reed salt is almost 22 times the price of standard sea salt. Now, I don't read all of the articles beforehand, but I have some experience over the years that I've been around and in my industry, where I talk about business, technology, and society merging together. And so when I read the beginning of an article and then I go over to the source, I always let people know that the origin of the article is whatever it was sourced from. So in this case, it's businessinsider.com. And I'm going to completely ruin this person's name because I don't know the proper inflection. But it's, I think, Enzi Dilheri, I think, but I could be completely wrong. I mean, if like there are some languages that like Clausen have a click in them for certain syllables. So I could be ruining this person's name. So if you know how to pronounce the name, let me know phonetically in chat and I'll never mispronounce the person's name again. But don't troll me, please. I don't want to ruin somebody's name consciously. And Clancy Morgan is the other author for this article. But we're going to scroll down and it says, on day one, harvesters cut out these river reeds, and in 8 days after drying, burning, filtering, the reeds will produce one of the most expensive salts in the world. Just 1 tablespoon of river reed salt costs $1 in Kenya. Compare that to 4 cents it costs locals for the same amount of sea salt. So how do producers make salt from river reeds and why is it so expensive? Yeah, the article goes into greater detail. But ta-da! You're going to have to go over and watch. They don't have any text in this one. And so here's the magic of this. Because I read just a snippet of it, your reaction to this article and my reaction are almost the same, except sometimes I get to add some wisdom or lack of wisdom. And we're both finding out about this information somewhat at the same time. But I actually have some experience with the business aspect of things like this. And so when it's very rare, very time consuming, laborious, the cost is always going to be higher, mainly because the source is very constrained, and none of it is automated. So the human aspect of it is what raises those costs. But if you go over to Insider, and this is how I do it, I take my link and I throw it into chat, and then you can follow that link either now or later. I prefer you just copying it and throwing it into our browser so that you can see it. And I'll continue with the rest of the news and we can chat about it either later today or tomorrow if you come back. But either way, my objective is to throw news at you that you might find interesting and then have a conversation about it. The next article, and I kind of move quick because I've got 20 articles that I like to go through, is in a channel that's about watches banned to bezel. And it says, just because H. Moser's latest provocation takes Vanta Black to the next level. And if you've never heard of Vanta Black is the darkest substance created by humans. And it's very expensive. It's somewhat regulated. You can get an kind of I don't want to say knockoff version. You can get a close approximation of Vanta Black, but it isn't a black paint. It's actually carbon nanotubes in a substrate. And so it's not easily done. You can't just apply it to anything. For instance, it's not painted on. So this is apparently in a watch, Streamliner chronograph, blacker than black. Let's click this link and I'll take you over to a source that I find amazing for this type of industrial engineering. So it's a website called hodinky.com, and that's the face of the watch. So This article is written by Logan Baker over at Hodinkee.com, and you'll have to go over and read more about it. But the photography on this, look at that watch. So this thing absorbs something like 99. Oh, the article actually says it right there. Famously, Vanta Black is able to absorb 99.965% of all light that hits it. So if you put this thing on, it's like wearing a black hole. People will look at you and wonder what is going on with your hand, because it'll look like it's hovering, because no light comes off of it. And the reason why no light comes out of it is because light gets caught inside the nanotubes, the carbon nanotube structure, because it's basically like vertical tubes, and it bounces around inside and doesn't come out. So because there's no reflectivity, you see nothing, because what we see as humans is really shadows. The light that comes off is the light that is not absorbed by the material. So you see blue because all the other light is being absorbed by the material. In this case, nothing comes off of it except for the hands. So what I like to do is kind of just skip all the rest of this. You can read the rest of this, but look at that watch. It's sitting next to a conventional watch, right? So you can't see anything except the arms on the face of this watch. And what I love about watches is actually all of the material that goes into it is always, it's typically, let me say typically, the same. But the engineering that goes into making it unique is always fascinating. And when you get to see, let me see if there's more. No, there isn't any more. But this watch is not going to be cheap. It's probably a one of a kind. Let me see here. Has given Schaffenhausen-based operation a one-of-a-kind voice in the watch world today that continues to feel fresh and exciting. Yeah, so this is not going to be something that, this is something that somebody created as a let's see if we can do it kind of piece. But somebody, I'm sure, will be able to afford it. Some of these watches on this site go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then what I really like showing, let me see if they've got another watch on here. No, they don't. I mean, they do have other watches, but there isn't anything else on here. Is the case back, where you get to see some of the gear works and the balance. It's just a blast. This site always has really good photography. But this is actually the shortest article that I've seen on their site. But let's keep on going. There's a whole lot more. I just started, so there's been a lot of things about Will Smith. I didn't really get into it in any of my previous episodes since the slap heard around the internet. And this isn't even about that. This is actually the fact that one of the three elements that I talk about, business, technology, and society, they all come together, right? And in this particular instance, in the continuity report, this article talks about the wrong Will Smith being targeted by people using technology. So society just leaned into this and started accosting this other Will Smith without any critical thinking, without any inspection, without any inquiry, without anything. They just saw a name and they started blasting a person. So it says the owner of the verified Twitter Will Smith account is not the disgraced actor Will Smith, who just resigned from the Academy after slapping Chris Rock on the 94th Academy Awards. And let's click over to the source of this. So this is an article over at Variety.com, and it's by Todd Spangler. And so I bring this up because it's something that a lot of people think that they're doing the right thing by voicing their opinion, but it's not targeted in the right way. And it's similar to Will Smith walking up to a person and slapping them, but it's the digital version. But people think that because it's online, they are beyond arm's reach, so they can just do whatever they want to and walk away scot-free. Nobody's going to follow this person up and say, hey, you know what? I totally blasted you on your Twitter account and I'm really sorry about it. I was a complete tool. But this is where we are in the 21st century with platform after platform where anybody can say whatever they want, to a degree. There are times where you might say something and it's libel or slander. It depends on how it is presented. But in this case, people are just blasting some guy on the internet because he matches the name, just the name, and nobody thought about it. Pretty sad. And that's the extent of my engagement with the Will Smith slap. As much as I don't think that physical violence is the answer, he will get his award for his acting, and the whole world will move on in short order. The next article here, and not everything is of global importance, but this one here is interesting because it's in the Daily News Show, which is this show, but it's Westward Ho. Maine potatoes travel from far after Western drought. So Maine's potato growers had such a bumper crop that they're helping out larger potato states in another state, right? Let's click this link and it'll take us over to ABC News. And this is an article from David Sharp from Associated Press. I'll just pause this. And so if you're not familiar with the states, Maine is on one side, but there is a horrendous drought that's taking place on the other side of the states. And potatoes, of all things, are being shipped around because of various droughts around the nation. So literally hot potato. They are being shipped around, which is great because it will help the local economy while feeding people in other states. And it's one of these things, it comes up now in my news regularly about food because of what's going on with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, impacting everybody from the EU down into Africa and Asia, all because one country is being just hammered by another right at the beginning of their growing season too. So let's hope that gets resolved, and we're all going to embrace fixing Ukraine once Russia gets out of there. So let's continue on. This next article is in Hatch Ideas channel, and this is about the chocolate company Cadbury warns public not to fall for social media scam that claims to offer free Easter hampers to users. I clicked this simply because of that. Didn't read anything like I don't normally read the full article anyway. Not at least on the air. Afterward, I do, but not before or during. But it says here, chocolate manufacturer Cadbury recently warned people about the WhatsApp message scam. The scam purports to offer people free Cadbury Easter hampers via a link in a message. A British police force also issued a warning saying the scam attempts to access personal details. So this is your stereotypical phishing attempt. And they're leaning on Cadbury's good name. Let's click the link. It'll take us over to businessinsider.com. Zahra Tayeb is the author of this. And let me scroll down here. And I also bring it up because I'm curious if you have ever compared two different years of candy, let's say. We know that Cadbury eggs have been suffering from shrinkflation. If you've never heard that term, it means the product is getting smaller, but the price is staying the same. And sometimes you get shrinkflation with the product getting smaller and the price going up. And that's kind of what the world is going through right now. Well, that's the thing that I'm worried about. But for this article, I wanted to help at least talk about, at least for a second, the cybersecurity issue here, which is never click on anything from an email from a company where you haven't checked what the source of the email is. Nowadays, you can actually see what the source is. It's not necessarily the one that is purported to be the actual company. And if it doesn't come from their branded account, or it has typos or something that looks like leet speak, where a letter has been replaced with a number, or there is some random capital letter somewhere in the text, just don't click it. Don't worry about it. Don't bother. And usually it's people that click on this stuff that don't necessarily, read deep into it or consider their personal information valuable. But let me tell you, trying to come back from somebody stealing your identity is a daunting feat that you do not want to go through. And it starts out with something like this. They can send you a tweet, you click on a link, you put some information in, they send you another message, you click on that message, and it can embed something on your system, opening up a door for somebody to walk through. It is that simple. And unless you're street smart, internet smart, you can fall for it pretty easily because you think that everything's legit, right? And believe me, it's not. And while you here in my chat may not fall for stuff like this, you may know somebody that does. And so I want to talk about it so that you feel encouraged to tell other people about this kind of stuff. You can protect others while you protect yourself. So let's continue on to the next article. This next one is in Hatch Ideas as well. This is a channel. Hatch Ideas will be on Twitch. I'm considering doing it today, not today, but on Saturdays, where we focus more on business, information, technology, intellectual property, product development, new product development, I should say, and strategic management. And for this article says scientists map a full human genome for the first time, including previously hard to read, quote unquote, junk DNA that could contain clues about conditions from autism to aging. Now, back in the day, it used to cost millions of dollars to do portions of the genome. Now it's getting a whole lot cheaper, but the amount of data in the full human genome is massive. So you really do have to sift through it with big data analysis. It's not something that humans can just look at and go, it's cool. And one of the things that's always bothered me is that people in the industry think they call it junk DNA. It's not junk DNA. It's DNA that we don't know what the function is. And it's always been a misnomer to me. But the industry kind of agrees with it. It utilizes that term, junk DNA. But then, decades later, we find out that there are things within this junk DNA that could be indicative of either allowing us to be aware of maladies, or evolutionary benefits to our existence. So why do we have this color eye, or why do we have 5 fingers on each hand? It could be something that is known within this junk DNA. And through data analysis, we find out how to resolve this. And so you end up with gene therapy because now we know the full extent of the human genome. Now, this could be a genome that isn't necessarily, the perception of the perfect human being, which just doesn't exist. And so more of these genome decodings need to take place so that we can see what happens when there is genetic wobble. So here it says scientists have produced the first gap-free sequencing of the human genome. The telomere to telomere consortium formally published their findings Thursday. Advancements in technology allowed the group to sequence the newly uncovered segments. So let's click this link and it'll take us over to businessinsider.com. And this article is written by Gabrielle Benez. And let me scroll down a little bit and see if there's something of real interest. So yeah, here we go. Scientists announced Thursday that they've mapped the human genome with no gaps 19 years after the Human Genome Project completed, quote, an essentially finished version. The group of about 100 scientists did this, and their findings were first announced in 2021, but they published it. So let's scroll down a little bit later. And so here they say what I was talking about. Some called it quote unquote junk DNA, but other researchers over the years found evidence it could contain clues about issues from autism to aging to otherwise unexplainable diseases, expert told Stat in 2017. Yeah, and this is the level that I am interested in, because what you get from current genetic testing outlets is not the full genome. You get the definition of their full genome, which is what is available at the time. So it says within 10 years, getting a complete, perfectly accurate human genome will be a routine part of healthcare, and it will be cheap enough that it won't be second thought. An under $1,000 lab test. If that happens, I will fall over myself to get it. Because one of the more fascinating things in human existence is knowing what it is that makes a human being, and being able, for me, my wife, my kid, my family members, we could actually all get this test and compare our genome, then compare medical records and find out if we might suffer the same things, but with greater awareness, and then take precautions to limit that. Because a lot of issues come up later in life when you are not as healthy as when you are 18 to 24, although that's when you take the most risk too. But anyway, this will be amazing as time goes on. So let's continue on. Pardon me, let me turn down my music a little bit. I don't think y'all can hear it, but so this next article is in The Word and Tech. The real Magic Mouse is made by Logitech, not Apple. And let's just click the link so that we can play some catch up. I've got a bunch of articles. And this is an article over at The Verge. It's written by Sean Hollister. And I want to scroll down here and see. We may never know why Apple doggedly insists on you charging its mouse upside down, which, by the way, if you are not an Apple user, the Magic Mouse has its power connector underneath its footpad, which is beyond frustrating. I will never understand why it's like this. And if they're going to do this, why not just make it wireless charging? I mean, it would be easy enough to put a coil in there, because mice are optical mice now, not roller balls, not something that gets in the way of an electrical charging system. Just put a Qi charger mat under a mouse like this and let it go. Charge it, let it charge. Why have a cable plugged in underneath it? It's like they're forcing downtime. Very frustrating. Well, anyway, ta-da! This is an amazing mouse, by the way. Wireless charging, multiple programmable buttons. I think this is the one. I think the G502 allows you to put in weights so that you can change the stability, well, the perceived stability of it, as long as you don't, I don't know, if you're not picking it up and doing stuff with it. Weight to me doesn't really matter, but weight actually plays a role when people are in gaming. They want that mouse to be stable and not slide anywhere. So a little bit of weight often makes it a better feel. But these things are robust. Again, in my line of work, we have these in place everywhere. In our more higher end requirements. So not everybody gets these, but when it's necessary, we use Logitech. Lightspeed mice, they're amazing. So let's scroll down a little bit. It shows you some more. But honestly, they're a little bit more expensive. It says particularly when customers do claim their mice eventually stopped charging or that the mouse pad peeled apart and had to be taped or glued. Plus, it's incredibly pricey at $120 for the mouse pad alone. Yeah, the charging system is separate, so you have to buy it as well as the mouse. Otherwise, you have to charge it. And let me scroll down a little bit more. So you can get the mouse. I think you can get it for under 120 bucks. I don't think it's 140 right now. But it depends on where you buy it and where you are. So it's pretty neat. This is a different mouse. This is a Logitech G900. But yeah, completely wireless if you want it to be. Okay, let me scroll up, and I hope that doesn't make anybody sick. I try not to scroll up really fast, but I want you to get back to the article's title, which is "The Real Magic Mouse is made by Logitech, not Apple." And I have to agree, except that I am an oddball in that I use a trackball. Here, I'll even show you. Oh gosh, I clicked the wrong thing. Let me go here. So my mouse is actually connected, but I'll show you what my trackball is that. And my particular model is the Deft Pro, and it's a little bit bigger than a standard trackball, but it allows me to keep everything in one little spot, and I don't have to have a mouse pad or roll anything anywhere. And I've made a modification in it so that my when you first buy these things, they have ruby spheres where the ball sits, but they're not perfect. And so it actually is clunky, and the ball drags and has a lot of friction on these ruby ball bearings. And so I took mine apart and I put ceramic bearings in, and now it's buttery smooth. So you can always do stuff like that with other devices as well. A little bit of upgrade, a little bit of tweak, and you can make an even superior product. Hello, Gerald. How are you? Thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate it. Wow, really good to see you all. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free. Let me know. We've got about 6 more articles. Yeah, all is really well. Thanks for stopping by. Are either of you two or anybody else going to be streaming at about 7:05, 7:10? Let me know. I've got Twitch open, so I'm looking to see who might be streaming, and I'll just raid back. But thank you very much for swinging by. So I try to avoid politics in my stream, but again, this is about what I talk about, just as a reminder, not really trying to, bombard you with the same ideology, but what I merge business, technology, and society, and this is all 3 of them. So this is a new social networking app called Truth Social. It just happens to be created by Trump. I don't necessarily care about who it's created by, but when it's hyped up a lot and people are talking about it a lot, yet when somebody goes to it, it's a ghost town. It's worth talking about. So this person, this author, and I don't know who it is yet, says, I spent a week on Trump's new social media app Truth Social. I felt like I was exploring a ghost town. And so they say it was like a ghost town. Lots of prominent right wingers like Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro weren't anywhere to be seen. Much of the content in my newsfeed was auto generated, and many of the app's functions didn't work. And it was this whole social media site spun up because um, the perception was people were being kicked off of platforms or deplatformed. But when you are prominent and you say things that are factually incorrect, eventually you show up on the radar high enough that a platform will boot you off. And it could go for you, it could go for me, it doesn't matter who it is. The moment that you land on somebody's radar, you have the potential of being punted. So let's click this link. And the article is over at Business Insider. It's written by Rosie Bradbury. I don't know if that's the person that was actually on it, but it appears to be who went over to Truth Social to check it out. So they downloaded the Truth Social app on launch day, created an account, only to be told that they were on a wait list at spot 157,120. And then they got in. I had been told as well that it was quote unquote hard to get on. It's odd to me that a social network would put a pause on anybody. If you're ready for prime time, then you launch publicly and you embrace that hype, business wise, technology wise as well. You don't, well, I hope you don't leave too soon building. Thanks for sticking around though. And I saw that when it came in, but I didn't stop. I'm sorry. So when somebody gets allowed to be in a social network, but you are trying to build up hype, all it does is put the brakes on the social network. Not quite sure why the business process wouldn't want you to just dig in. But their perception here is that sign so far is that Truth Social is a flop. And then they go into other bits about this. But yeah, for me, it is decidedly siloed. They want a particular type of person with a particular type of mindset about politics, about whatever might be going on. To me, it isn't really a social media app. It's more of a silo. So similar to, and I'm not comparing them directly because context always matters in these statements. Much like LinkedIn focuses on business, a very specific type of social network, Truth Social is that, because there's never been any other marketing than we want this type of participant on our network. Whereas sites like Twitter or Reddit or wherever, typically as a social network, you can do whatever you want. We want everybody to come to ohmTown, for instance, right? But if you start saying things that are virulent and not true, and you are influencing people, then there is a little bit more looking at what is going on, because you can cause great harm by fomenting lies, half-truths, conspiracy, etc. And if you invited me into your house and I started talking about that stuff, you'd ask me to leave. And that's what a website is. It's somebody else's house. So read the room. So let's continue on with the next article. This is Order of the Leaf, which is about tea. And this is the Midwest Tea Festival from May 7th to May 8th. Not everybody is going to be able to go to this kind of thing, but it's about awareness. You might be able to go to the site and read something interesting, and it might pique your curiosity to go and get some tea. I'm interested in all kinds of things. One of them happens to be tea. And it says on Mother's Day weekend, May 7th and 8th, the Midwest Tea Festival returns this year after a 2-year pandemic hiatus. Yeah. Under the new management of Dr. Sally Y. of Sally's Parlor. So if you are interested in this kind of thing, then feel free to go over to Teaching. This article was posted by Teaching's staff, so they always say just Teaching. But if you go over to teaching.com, there's all kinds of information. If you are a tea lover, and without putting too fine a point on it, I drink a lot of things, not just tea. So, for instance, the order of the bean is about coffee. The order of the brew is about beer. The order of the grape is about wine, and the order of the leaf is about tea. Ta-da! Distillerist is a focus on adult spirits, whiskey, for instance. And eventually I will have Mix War, which is not a drinking channel. It's about music. But attorneys say that I will never be able to get this off the ground without considerable work. So we will see what happens with this. Licensing is where we're at. The next article is the man who brought almost a small armory and Molotov cocktails to the Capitol riot in the United States was sentenced to 46 months in prison. So this is the latest, and it says here, a man who parked a truck full of weapons near the Capitol on January 6th was sentenced Friday. Lonnie Kaufman, 72, was sentenced to 46 months in jail, one of the heftiest sentences yet. Quote, he had almost a small armory in his truck ready to do battle. So if anybody was questioning what was going on with this, it's pretty obvious. The article here says it's from businessinsider.com. It's written by Aaron Snodgrass. And in all of the discussion about the politics involved with this is the reason why I bring it up, is because this transcended politics and it went straight to the possibility of violence, and only got stopped mainly because of the resistance that was posed. It never rose to the level because nobody ever got access, the ability to utilize these, but it was dangerously close. So among the items found in Kaufman's vehicle on January 6th were 11 mason jars filled with gasoline and styrofoam. This is the poor man's napalm, is what it's called. Flaming Dr. Peppers, perhaps. Yes. You just never know. I mean, sometimes you just want to put gasoline in your drink, and then when you burp, you can pretend you're a dragon and shoot flames out of your mouth. When you're invading a capital, that's what people do, and it's all just a prank, right? But there are more and more people. There are hundreds of arrests, and people are starting to go to prison. And some of them are being, it's rising to the level of treason. And we'll continue to watch this. I hardly ever report that kind of stuff out. But again, this was more about the potential of violence, not just the machinations of politics. There's other channels that can go into that kind of stuff. But this was something that it was televised. It was broadcast across the internet. We all watched this happen, and still there are questions. It's like the invasion of Crimea, and what was told to everybody was that they're just vacationers that are piling up on the border, and then they take over Crimea. The same thing happened with Ukraine. Kind of goes beyond the pale to say these things. We just don't believe you anymore. This next article is over in the Mobile channel. This month's picks are proof that it doesn't take big bucks to scare people's pants off. With undead messiahs, unseen demons, and uncanny commotions. This is 5 horror movies to stream now. One of the problems that I have with talking about this kind of stuff is that not everybody has the same, like you can have net access to Netflix, but you don't get the same movies that I get here in the States. And so it's an interesting dialogue pretty much every time. But this is an article over at NewYorkTimes.com. It's written by Eric Piepenberg. And this is, let's see, hold on. That's okay. So Blood Conscious is is streaming. Godforsaken is streaming. What else? Knocking. You'll have to go. Sorry for the jumps. It's not even me that's making a jump. After the pandemic. That's funny. I'm not sure about after the pandemic. Hunt or be hunted? Let's see. What if a pandemic wiped out some of us? Not some of us, but most of us. That's the terrifying premise behind Richard Lowry's thrifty thriller that channels the spirit of Contagion on a dime. So expect some superior acting, I'd say. But you never know. And let's see what else. Tethered is the last one, I think. Oops. Sorry for the jump again. It's not me, it's the website. And it says that you can rent it or buy it on most major platforms. Yeah, I haven't seen Tethered. Has anybody seen Tethered? So you can go and find out more about all of these budget horror movies, which campy movies, I love campy movies. I mean, Army of Darkness, for instance, is, I love Army of Darkness if you've never seen it. It's a great one. But let's continue on. That way you get to go and watch these movies. Or you can hang out and chat with me. And this is about what to cook this weekend. We're already into Saturday or Sunday, depending on your location. Let's see. I'm just going to click the link. We're running up on an hour already. What to cook this weekend? Katayev, I've never heard of. I've never seen. Caldo de Castilla. Castilla. I haven't seen that. And Italian broccoli salad, which is, I don't know. This is a New York Times cooking segment, and it's written by Sam Sifton. And let's see here. It will no longer publish recipes for chicken, duck, turkey, goose, Cornish game hen, pigeon, or grouse. This is in keeping with recent reporting that show that birds aren't real. They're actually drones used by the government to spy on Americans, and they charge on power lines. By the way, that is a real conspiracy theory. But it's a prank that somebody started a while back. In conjunction with real conspiracy theories. So this is supposed to be tongue in cheek. So it says, just kidding. It's an April Fool's Day. But really, this actually started by somebody kind of spoofing a conspiracy theory. So it's, it's a real world thing made up by somebody else, not this author. So they talk about Ramadan. They talk about Colombian. Oh, it's so caldo de Castilla is a Colombian beef rib and potato soup. That sounds great. Let's see. Ramadan. What is this here? We have recipes for evening iftar dishes and starters and sides and dishes, including reem cassis, new one for sweet pancakes known as katayev. Oh, okay. Well, it's a sweet pancake. I've given up candy. So when I hear about anything sweet, I just want to go and try it. But man, it is rough. I don't know if anybody else has ever given up sugar, but I'm not adding sugar to anything. My coffee has always been black, or with milk, like a latte. But giving up sugar is, people people like to say that it's like giving up a drug addiction. And, I'm looking at candy when I'm walking through the aisles. I'm looking at candy. Oh, I want that. Um, I almost have to have somebody follow me to keep me from diving into it and swimming around like Scrooge McDuck. I don't know if you all know about Scrooge McDuck, but he swims in gold. See, I get so sidetracked so easily. Um, if more people chatted in chat, I would never get through this hour. So, uh, appreciate y'all lurking and at least letting me get through the hour. Almost done. We got two more. Two more. Oh yeah. So Gerald, you said tea and ice cream would be what hurts the most. Is it because of a reaction to it, or because you wouldn't stop? You just keep on drinking tea and eating ice cream? Because both of those are killing me too. I drink now unsweet, plain iced tea, and everybody else talks to me and says, I don't know how you do it. So this article is in the Mobile channel. This is the second to last one. So it says, with 4-day work weeks, Fridays are free time. Some lucky workers are only working half Fridays year round if they work Fridays at all. The verdict, it's magic. Oh, you gave it up. Wouldn't be able to quit those if I gave up sugar. Yeah. Yeah, I just turned it off cold turkey. But I haven't had a soft drink like a Coke or a sweet drink like that for 2.5 years. Right before the pandemic, I gave that up, and that was the hardest. Let's click this link and take a look at this. So this is a New York Times article, and it's by Allison Kruger. And in some places, you can actually take a RDO, basically a time off, every other Friday. It's pretty typical in government here in the States. And not everybody benefits from it. You have to work an hour longer each day. And it's every other Friday. But in the last 2.5 years, 2 years, let's just say 2 years, we're coming up on 2.5 before people actually re-engage in the workplace in many, many sectors. But we've discovered that we don't have to have butt in seat to be a productive part of a company. In many other sectors, yes. And a phrase that I always say is context matters. So without a doubt, there are some people that have to go to work, right? But if you were to talk to your doctor and say, hey, I want to do a regular standard annual checkup, or want to check in on my previous session, they can just zoom you into their office, right? Just turn on your computer, turn on the camera, and off you go, just like we're doing right now. And I can sit there and describe any malady that I might have, and they'll either say, well, stop by the pharmacy or whatever. Even that has taken to being technology bound. So why not work? Well, there's a lot of old school mentality about having to have any work done. It has to be in the workplace at a cubicle. But a lot of businesses are bowing out of that. And it's because we now have the technology. It says, down the hatch, a casual sports bar on Christopher Street, Talia Shore, 37, a real estate agent in Manhattan, had gathered friends to celebrate the 39th birthday of her husband, Phil Petit. When the company was brainstorming what to do for the birthday, they kept thinking how much easier it would be to do something on a weekday. Their nanny, who works weekdays until 6 p.m., could watch the 18-month-old. So now they have the ability to do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday get together because they no longer have to worry about that Friday. So it's always a benefit. And there's actually some discussions. I'll keep scrolling through this. There is a lot of discussion now about making a 4-day work week. because you can be more productive because you aren't necessarily, you can be more productive. You aren't necessarily wasting time with other things because you know you have 4 days to get everything done. And telework covers a lot of problems, right? You no longer have to drive. You no longer have to sit in traffic. You don't have to worry about walking from one place to another for a meeting because everybody can just fire up Zoom or Teams or some other remote conferencing tool. It can save countless thousands of dollars and benefit your work-life balance. So I'm always a cheerleader for switching to remote. And this is our last article. And it relates to the last one in sort of a way. And this is about Activision Blizzard confirms vaccine mandate is over. Employees will walk out April 4th. Activision Blizzard is officially lifting its vaccine mandate for U.S. corporate employees, and workers have announced that they plan to walk out in protest. And here we are again. The company confirmed to The Verge that it had already ended the mandate, and an organization called A Better ABK. So let's click this link, and it'll take us over to the article. It's over at The Verge. It's written by Jay Peters. And essentially, they don't want to go back to the office. I'm sure the benefits of in-purpose collaboration is actually so employees organizing can be followed and closely and monitored closely. Do not die for this company is what Jessica Gonzalez tweeted out. But the intent is to bring people back into the workplace, except that if all you are doing is artwork, you don't need to be in the office. You can meet periodically in a conference room and discuss the ins and outs. The problem here is that they want somebody in an office to justify the carbon footprint of an office, whereas I want to have people not have to sit in traffic, enjoy work-life balance better on the life side than work side, and still get the job done. You can still do your artwork. You can still do your software development. You can still do your writing. You can still interact. And if you want to, you can set up a conference meeting, a terrestrial conference, by basically reserving a conference room and saying, hey, everybody, I want to get together, once every other week or something like that, just to check in to see if everybody has anything that they want to talk about, beyond having a Discord running 24 hours a day or setting up Zoom meetings, et cetera, et cetera. This is really the antithesis of a 21st century company. But again, it's all about monitoring to make sure that people are doing their work. But really, their work is created by work product that gets put into a system. If somebody's just sitting around, you'll know it way faster. Either way, if they're in the office and they are not meeting their deadlines, you'll find out about it. Even with a check-in, swinging by their cubicle, they can say, yeah, I'm on it. They can show you work, but it's, half-assed or something like that. Pardon me one second. But when you are remote and you've got somebody that can say, hey, I want to set up a Zoom meeting, show me your work, they get to see it right then and there. It gives them time to get the work done if they've been slacking or whatever. But this is really about micromanagement, having people in an office. So Geralt says, there's definitely still a negative stigma with teleworking. Yes, definitely so. And this spans pretty much the spectrum of jobs. If you are, although attorneys tend to be more embracing now because everything is electronic filing, electronic interviews. I can once I prove your identity, I can have a remote interview with you and just talk about things. You don't have to come into the office, although some can come into the office. Some prefer that. And some clients prefer that. Same thing with business. I don't need you to come into my office to talk about your business. And I can still consult for you. I can still, walk you through whatever the problem is with your business. Um, I can do all of people can do so many things in the comfort of their home and benefit from not having to sit in traffic for 2 hours um, each way at times. I mean, my longest commute, I spent 6 hours on the regular going through rush hour traffic in San Diego, California. It was always a nightmare because of the loop that I did for my particular job. It was just horrendous. And now I'm much more streamlined. And so my work-life balance is much better. And I think that's what's going to keep on shaking up industry. And that's why there's this thing called the Great Resignation. That's why there's a subreddit called Anti-Work. That's why there's a lot of unionization. Essentially, employees are realizing that there's zero loyalty and zero benefit from being loyal to a company that doesn't necessarily look forward other than um, maybe profiting off of perhaps the misery of their employees because they're being forced to do something that isn't necessary in this day and age. And this negative stigma to teleworking also applies to education. There's a lot of benefit from going into a college or university. Primarily, it's the social networking side of things. But you're going to spend more time online doing research and writing and everything associated with data more than having to be in an office. So you might as well get hip to using the tools regularly, constantly, and for business, not just for your social side of things. In a college, that social networking is the asset that comes from being on campus for 4 years with the same people and making those inroads. Because a friend that you make in college could be the person that gets you a job in the real world when you leave college or during college for that matter. So I understand the benefit. But the work-life balance, once you have a job, really should shift. And I would love for companies to come to me and say, this is why we have, and I've actually had these conversations with people, but more businesses that don't realize that you don't need all of the offices because everybody has an office. Wherever they are could be an office. The benefit to the employee is tremendous. Their work-life balance in particular only gets better with not having to go into an office. Pardon me one more second. Okay. And so with that, I'm actually done with the articles, but I'll take you back to the beginning of ohmTown.com. And again, it's a bunch of news. Not everything is going to be of interest to you, but when you click the page, it will refresh. And I always say, unless I broke something, which is quite possible. And there you have it. I am somewhere around 250,000 articles. There we go. 242,000 discussions. And it's over a long period of time naturally, but it's nonstop. So there's always something to talk about. Most people just consume the articles and don't necessarily chat. And with that, I'm actually done with the news portion of it, but I'm happy to discuss things.